Marhaba, Shalom, and welcome to the exciting new podcast Israel and Palestine Unpacked that is dedicated to exploring the complexities of the ongoing political situation between Palestinians and Israelis. Throughout the course of this podcast, it is my hope that we can delve into the historical and contemporary events and ideas that have shaped the course of this long-standing geopolitical and humanitarian crisis, as well as explore the ongoing and unresolved issues, while remembering the human cost, experience, and perspective. The situation has been brought into sharp focus nationally and internationally by recent events that have dominated our screens as well as our thoughts. The aim here is to be sensitive, as I understand that emotions are easily triggered. It is important to note that the topic will be approached from an academic position to unpack and understand the issues, and that all views expressed will be and are the views of the interviewees alone. Before we go into today's episode, it's important for me to give special thanks to Mike, a professional audio producer from Media Mihael, for composing the intro and outro music for this podcast, to Colin Mahalinden for help with editing and his professional wisdom, to Ricky at Login Studio for designing the logo, and finally to friends and family for their feedback. In today's episode, we are speaking to a Palestinian student currently displaced in Gaza as a consequence of the ongoing war. She shares a little about her lived experience in the coastal strip and her hopes and dreams for the future. And secondly, we are chatting with an Israeli entrepreneur currently living in London, who speaks about his experience around 7th of October, his concerns about the direction of the current Israeli government, and his past dialogue with Palestinians in the West Bank. I do hope that you find this episode of Israel and Palestine Unpacked informative. And if you would like to receive more content, you are welcome to subscribe and join us as we journey to gain insightful perspectives and knowledge together. Our first interview is with Ansam, who comes from a small Palestinian town called Beit Lahia in Northern Gaza. She is an English student who loves photography and before the war worked as a swimming instructor. As a consequence of the fighting, she is currently residing with her family in Khan Younis as an internally displaced refugee. She begins her interview by talking about her background and upbringing, as well as her experience of living in the Gaza Strip.
I hail from a small town in Northern Gaza called Beit Lahia. My family has a strong presence in both agriculture and sports in the area. Let me talk a little bit about my grandmother. When she was just 18, she courageously stepped into the role of managing our family farm. A time when my grandfather was dedicated to his studies, actually. And this period was particularly challenging as Gaza was under the siege of the Israeli army. Presenting enormous obstacles and struggles despite of all what's going on, they persevered actually. Like while my grandfather went to Egypt for his studies, my mother continued to pour her efforts into the farm. These stories of their unwavering determination and resilience as I was growing up, it really shaped my mindset and mental strength. Like my grandpa always wished for me to embody the same level of creativity and strength of my grandmother. Like looking back, I was in awe of the girl who would wake up at 5 a.m. to carry a crop basket in her head and heading to the grocery store. And imagine all that to provide a better and a decent life for her family. And actually, she's turning now 86, and she's alive. And may God bless her. So I grew up in a Syrian rural setting, where my daily life was like filled with simplicity, actually. But despite this, I was fortunate enough to immerse myself in various cultures through the pages of books, captivating stories, and acquisition of new skills. And this experience in particularly sparked a flame of curiosity within me and intensified my yearning to explore the world. Upon completing high school, I harbored fervent desire to pursue my studies outside of Gaza, but regrettably, that opportunity did not materialize at all. However, my passion for studying abroad flourished even more as I delved deeper into the realm of English literature. Like I was fascinated. I just constantly reassured myself and that there was still a chance actually. But as fate would have it, the rest of the story unfolded differently. And here I am. I'm at the middle of chaos and despair talking to you. It's just something happened once in a lifetime, actually.
How have your experiences living in the Gaza Strip shaped your worldview? What is life like there for you?
Before the war broke up, life actually, from my perspective, was perfect. Like I was having a really good university, a good education. I'm not complaining about anything because once you just accepted the reality, you just survive. And that's exactly what we want, to survive. We are not chasing for anything more than what we have. We just want to live in peace and freedom. If there was nothing to do more than resilient and accepting the reality, I don't know. I just think it's something you have to admit it, that you have a life to accept it. Though we are making efforts to resilient and to show that we are not just surviving. We are trying. We are asking for our rights to live in peace and freedom. And which is I guess that word did not understand. We are literally living in open prison. But life inside Gaza, people are surviving, like no matter what the odds. But after the war broke up, everything just changed. I have experienced maybe 3 wars before this, but this was something different. It's something just dramatically change in a blink of an eye. Like our houses, our university, our friends, our daily life. And I guess we don't have, like we will not never get the chance to bring that back again. Even if the war ends and we rebuild Gaza, something will ever be missed.
To the best of my knowledge, you're an English student and you study at the Islamic University of Gaza. How has the war impacted your studies and your ability to pursue education?
As an English student at the Islamic University of Gaza, the ongoing conflict and the fighting have significantly impacted my studies and the ability to pursue education. Like I was supposed to be graduating this year, and I was planning to further my studies directly after graduating abroad. But the war unfortunately broke up at the beginning of the semester, and it has been 8 months now. Like who would imagine that? Like talking about the infrastructure damage issues, university building, libraries, and laboratories have been completely destroyed due to the frequent airstrikes. It's destroying the whole university was not enough, actually. Like they even kill most of the faculty members. And one of them was my poetry professor, Dr. Rifat Al-Arayir. May his soul rest in peace. He was hands down one of the most experienced, humble and funny doctors I've ever had the pleasure to learning from. One of his famous poems is called If I Must Die, actually. The poem ends with a stanza that has become famous since the news of his killing resonated all over the world. He said, If I must die, let it bring hope, let it be a tale. Like his death has truly become extraordinary tale, actually. And actually, not just mentioning university in general, the entire educational process in Gaza in general has stopped since October. And there was no chance actually to study online, even online. Like due to the short age of the internet connection and the electricity, there was no way. But this is also related somehow to the psychological impact, like living in a conflict zone, including anxiety and trauma, or affect my ability to concentrate and perform academically. Like not only me, either all Gazan students, even though you get the chance to the internet access. That the feeling that washes over me recently is indescribable. Like when I see people my age on the other side of the world, donning their graduation gowns and embarking on their own unique life paths, like something I have never expected to see or to experience. Like I, what else to lost, you know?
Despite these hardships and the dangers that you and others face on a daily basis, you seem to try to see life from a very positive perspective.
Yeah,
What
of course.
what what keeps you motivated both in the present? What keeps you motivated for the future?
Actually, for my own perspective, the hardships and the challenges I feel that what I face serve as a powerful motivators. Like having a goal to strive for creates a strong sense of unwavering determination. It grows within me and also within anyone in Gaza who has a goal. Like what I mean, the challenges we encounter only serve as a strengthen our resolve. Living in challenging reality does not equate surrendering. It's all about embracing resilience, inner strength, and transformative power of overcoming diversities. This reminds me of a quotation, like our situation here in Gaza, for remind me of a quotation for J.K. Rowling. She's the author of Harry Potter. She said once, "Rock bottom become the soiled foundation in which I rebuilt my life." And this is actually what people in Gaza did. The literal meaning of people in Gaza. Like a little known fact about Gaza is that it has one of the lowest illiteracy rates in the world. Did you know that?
Literacy
Do you know
rates?
that? Yeah. Along with the West Bank, we have achieved high international literacy levels. Like, can you imagine, despite of the distress, sorrow, desperate, and in particular poverty, we are in the first stage, one of the most highest rates all over the world. Like, come on, it's unbelievable. Living, as I told you before, in open prison with not that much of tools and equipments that help people to learn and to study and to survive. And that's exactly what's happening in Gaza. A huge numbers of families in Gaza are suffering from poverty, though they are like you can't imagine how they are. I can't find the word. They how they are just insisted to learn to be educated to show the world that even though we are facing a big problems, we are looking to pursue our studies and to complete further studies and to be something good in life, like to do something in their life. That's what I was going to talk about. Just to take the chance to deeply thank the Irish people, actually. I would like to thank who has more protested, spoken, and boycotted and not stopped for the past 8 months. Like recently, Ireland has recognized Palestine as a state, which is like something happen like once in a lifetime. Like you show the world how the power of the voice of each and every single person. Like thank you so much. You never fails us, and thanks a lot for restoring my faith in humanity. Actually, this is something remarkable.
You're listening to Israel and Palestine Unpacked with me, your host, Porrick. If you've any comments, questions or feedback, please feel free to contact me at israelpalestineunpacked, all one word, @gmail.com. Or alternatively, you can connect via our Facebook page or X account, formerly known as Twitter. All contact information can be found below in the description. Our second interview is with Isac, an Israeli who speaks Arabic and who has taken part in a number of Israeli-Palestinian dialogue initiatives. One such example is Tech to Peace, which aims to create opportunities for young people, both Palestinians and Israelis, in tech and entrepreneurship with the aim of creating a shared community. In our interview with Isaac, we began by talking about how he has responded to the ongoing war and whether he has been indirectly impacted by it from afar.
I'm often these days very preoccupied with news, commenting online and such. Not impacted directly by what is going on so much. Haven't been to Israel since the start of the war, although many of my friends have. Generally, there hasn't been much going on in relation to the Israeli-Palestine situation in my part of northeast London where I live. Although I do see flags of Palestine and occasionally even I had one march right under my window. So I'm aware of the political tension, but it's not impacting me directly. I do know people who have been impacting directly, including a whole family that they were all initially abducted to Gaza, didn't survive the ordeals. Mother and two children, the others, they're back. I found the children also, they're back. At least the father, that family is still hostage. So I do personally know people who were in the towns and villages that were raided on the 7th of October, including, by the way, one person from Hollywood, Northern Ireland. I know her. She was actually there as the events unfolded. She was visiting her home village.
And just to understand, you're an Israeli. Where are you from in Israel?
So I grew up in Haifa. Haifa is Israel's major industrial port. And most of my adult life, I lived in Tel Aviv, the major cultural and commercial city of the country. Tel Aviv does serve some of the functions of a capital in reality. Some of the head offices of some government agencies, for instance, the Ministry of Defense, the Army General Headquarters, are actually in Tel Aviv, not in Jerusalem. Most embassies are also in Tel Aviv. Now, when you consider the overall size of Israel, really, Tel Aviv and the three other metro areas, they would count as a single metro area in other countries because they're within 1 hour by motorway or train of each other.
And how long have you been living in London for? What brought you to London?
I've been living in London for just over 5 years. What brought me to London, still discovering that it's a lot about life in a global city, building an international web of connections, engaging in entrepreneurship. It's on the positive side. I guess on the negative side, a concern about the direction that Israel is going. So I think I'm not sure how much people were following in the news from earlier in 2023, but the country was quite torn apart by a long-standing political stalemate that had been going on for a few years and huge demonstrations. And the theme of that contest was, I think, very much like what you saw in countries like Poland, Hungary, Turkey, where people whose outlook is more internationalist and liberal were finding themselves pitched against a government with strongly nationalistic and religious traditionalist tendencies, right? They're also typically authoritarian. So the same problems that you saw in the politics of Europe have been impacting Israel for quite a few years. And this is, I think, much of the backdrop, also much of what we've seen since the war started.
You mentioned earlier there that you knew people personally who were kidnapped into Gaza.
True.
Is that something you would like to talk about? Would you like to talk about that?
So one family I know, I actually know them. I grew up in the north of the country, and that's where they normally live today. But they went to spend a holiday with family in Kibbutz Be'eri, and the kibbutz was raided by death squads. I think that would be a fair term to use because they were going in and gunning down people randomly. And they were all captured, abducted into Gaza. Some were killed on the way or shortly after. And I was very dismayed to learn because initially I thought I don't actually know people from that part of the country, but well, as it turns out, I did. I guess that was a big part of my motivation to become very politically mobilized. Pretty much anyone here in London that I see who identifies as Israeli was concerned over the following few weeks to the point that people were not really on top of the regular life, working effectively. It's a very quite a small and closely knit country, so pretty much everyone had some personal acquaintance that was impacted by the events of 7 October. A lot of people were getting politically mobilized. And now to the outside world, it would seem as if all Israelis rallied in support of the government, where in fact what happened is everyone rallied in support of the country and in solidarity with the general public in Israel, and specifically with the abductees. Most people know someone, or at least know someone who knows well an abductee. Right? It's not just a news item. And this included both pro-government and pro-opposition Israelis. So initially, the differences became quite blurry. But if you are following news from Israel today, that you would see they are getting quite marked again. But anyway, it's a bit of an aside.
Yeah.
So pretty much everyone became mobilized.
You mentioned to me in a previous conversation about dialogue that you had with Palestinians in the West Bank. Would you like to talk about that? What was your experience like? Did it leave you with hope for the future, for the now? What do you think?
Yeah, I've had multiple dialogues on many occasions with Palestinians in the West Bank, also in Arab living in Israel or Israeli citizens that identify culturally, nationally as Palestinians. I had the privilege of, going to high school in the optimistic heyday of the Oslo Accords back in the mid 1990s, where for a short while we had the impression that things were going on towards a peaceful settlement, very much in line with what was happening shortly after in Northern Ireland. And I luckily took initiative to learn Arabic as foreign language. So I used to attend various groups, meetups, dialogue, language exchanges. And on a few occasions, I did visit Palestinian cities in the West Bank, especially Bethlehem, but also others like Jericho and Nablus. And first, one great thing I could see, there are people on the Palestinian side who are dedicated to build, to their own nation building. And they want to build a society that is humanistic, that is inclusive, that is democratic. Right? We definitely see that. Also, some of, I think, the most powerful voices for compromise and dialogue were from Palestinians who had served prison sentences in the Israeli prison system. They were typically the most fluent ones because they've had actual opportunity to speak Hebrew regularly, and often took some courses to learn about Hebrew and Hebrew language and the Israeli society. It was great to see them. There were some initiatives such as Combatants for Peace, the Joint Memorial Day. And so all this has been happening. At the same time, I think I wasn't giving that enough importance at the time, but I could see the factors that were perpetuating the Israeli-Palestinian dialogue the general political dysfunction of the Palestinian Authority, a strong tendency towards authoritarianism and political repression. Didn't seem like the few people that were, social leaders that I often did meet who were actually engaging in a nation building project. Much of the time, they seem to be like almost a negligible minority. Nobody seemed to own the nation building Palestine. So seemingly someone else's problem, but I never realized who that someone else might be.
As we come to the end of today's episode, I would like to firstly thank both Ansam and Isac for sharing their perspectives and experiences. It is through these conversations that we begin to develop a deeper understanding of the political situation in the region, lived out through personal lives. In our upcoming episode, we will hear from a Palestinian Musa, a finance professional and writer of short stories from Nablus, as well as a Canadian Israeli Corey, the director of the International MA program in Conflict Resolution and Mediation at Tel Aviv University, as well as the founder of the Ask project. Until then, what's left to say is thank you for joining us, and if you have any feedback or comments, please feel free to share your perspectives by getting in touch via email at Israel-Palestine Unpacked, all one word, @gmail.com, or alternatively via our Facebook page. All contact information can be found below in the description. I hope that you'll join me next time on Israel and Palestine Unpacked.